How would you feel if you found out that 1 out of every 3 leatherback sea turtles are dying from plastic consumption? How about if you knew that 80% of the ocean's plastic originates from land? Both of these things are true about the effect of single use plastics on aquatic life. That ocean life is dying due to our human activity. And according to the United Nations Environmental Program, global plastic production in 2015 resulted in over 400 million tons of plastic, and of those 400 million tons, 84 million of those are produced by North America, which is about 21%. And that's estimated that 1 to 5 trillion plastic bags are used and disposed of yearly. And this recently came to my attention through my environmental health science class at UGA, my job as a cashier at Publix, that I'm able to see how many plastic bags are used daily at my store, and that through my biology lab, I was able to do a little bit of research on microplastics and how it affects the environment. And as people, you guys likely use single-use plastics like straws, bags, cups, and lids, we should be more environmentally conscious of how we use and how we dispose of these products on a daily basis. And so I believe that the United States should adopt a nationwide ban on single-use plastics, which are goods produced from fossil fuel-based chemicals, and they are intended to be disposed of shortly after use. And this is in order to limit the amount of plastics that enter the land and sea habitats. And so today I'd like to share with you guys how single-use plastics are impacting the environment, explain how single-use plastics came to be part of throwaway culture, and demonstrate how the banning of such plastics can work to solve the issue. So first, let's take a look about how single-use plastics impact the environment. And so single-use plastics result in about half of all global plastic production. And unfortunately, only about 9% of all global plastic production are recycled, and that 91% of these plastics end up in landfills in the environment. That plastic bags are often mistaken for food by many aquatic animals that, according to Earth Day, which is an environmental advocacy organization, these animals, the plastic bags, result in the deaths of over 100,000 sea turtles every year. And a few things to know about plastic bags, that they often escape into the environment during transport to and from landfills and recycling centers. And that litter that someone might just throw like a straw into the street, it often enters into the environment when waste management systems are lacking, or like I just said, it was littered. And according to Greenpeace, which is a United Kingdom government environmental advocacy organization, that plastic will end up into our waterways and drainage systems. That according to the United Nations, 1 out of every 3 normal turtles have plastic in their stomach, and that this presents problems with digestion and buoyancy, and it affects them with their scavenging for food and will eventually kill them. And that these single-use plastics often don't make it to the landfills or recycling centers, and of the 84 million tons of all plastic produced every year, about 30% of those plastics can make it into the oceans. That these plastics don't just break down, they break up into microplastics. And according to the United Nations, these microplastics end up in our waterways, in our food, and in our bodies. And they're dangerous because they're made from fossil fuel chemicals, and that these chemicals are endocrine disruptors and carcinogens, which have health impacts like hormonal imbalances, reproductive issues like infertility, and they often also cause cancer. And that these environmental advocacy groups like Earth Day and NRDC have stated that the single-use plastics also contribute to greater greenhouse gas emissions in each step of their life cycle. That when they're sourced out, carbon dioxide and other emissions enter the atmosphere, and then that these refineries that convert this oil into plastics, they're some of the most greenhouse gas emitting plants in the entire world. That 24 of these plants, if you combined all their emissions together, they would have the same carbon dioxide output of 3.8 million cars. And so now that I've shared how single-use plastics impact the environment, I'll share how they became so widespread. So they were first invented in the 19th century, that they became extremely popular in the 1970s with the introduction of plastic bags in stores. And that these stores started to replace paper bags with lighter and cheaper plastic alternatives. The NRDC found that consumers thought that it was more efficient and that it boosted their satisfaction. And the NRDC also found that the stores and manufacturers implemented these plastic alternatives because they didn't want to have the cost of like glass jars instead of plastic jugs, or aluminum cans were too expensive to produce as opposed to plastic bottles. And that over time these plastics became viewed as disposable rather than reused or recycled, and it led to the use of single-use plastics. And that these single-use plastics and the styrofoam products, according to the United Nations, are so widespread and common due to the low cost of production, durability, and then their potential to be hygienic, and that these same characteristics result in their bad impact on the environment. So now that I've shared how single-use plastics are so widespread, I'll discuss how a nationwide ban would be an effective solution. So in order to protect the environment, the United States should adopt a nationwide ban on single-use plastics, which will help mitigate the impact that they have on the environment on land and offshore. That there have been a variety of plastic bag bans globally, and that they focus on typically utensils, straws, and cups. And according to the United Nations NRDC, they prevent millions of tons of plastic from entering the waterways and waste management systems globally yearly, and that greenhouse gas emissions are effectively reduced. That there are a number of examples of how these plastic bag bans have been effective. Like in California, 85% of these plastic bag use has been reduced by 85%. That Japan and Taiwan have completely banned plastic bags and cutlery. Australia and New Zealand have completely banned plastic bags. The European Union has a directive that requires a ban, and that if they don't ban the countries, if they don't ban the plastics, that there has to be corporate agreements with these companies that produce these single-use plastics to effectively eliminate them. That Costa Rica is going to be the first country in the world to effectively eliminate production and use of new single-use plastics by 2021. But North America, we have no regulations on a federal level, that they're only on a local and state level in a few areas. That single-use plastics, is important to know that they encourage consumers to be environmentally conscious. The NRDC conducted a poll that when New York State implemented a plastic bag ban and also implemented a fee on the use of paper bags, it encouraged consumers to use reusable bags, and it led to a switch to a more environmentally conscious life, like switching to a reusable water bottle, and it also led for them to recycle more. So in conclusion, with the increasing amount of plastics in the ocean and a continued decline in air quality due to greenhouse gas emissions, a nationwide ban on single-use plastics will work to mitigate the impact that single-use plastics have on our health, the health of those around us, animals, and the environment. That there are many laws nationally that ban on plastics, that the plastic industry lobbyists, they work with their legislators to have obstacles that prevent local ordinances from passing bans. And according to Earth Day, that is what's preventing many of these nationwide plastic bans. So I urge you guys to conduct your own research, to establish your own opinions on this topic, and contact your representatives and senators to encourage them to help enact a nationwide plastic ban. That it's important to know that plastics do not just litter the natural landscape. They pollute our air, they damage our water, and they cause health problems. That who knew that throwing away a straw just from Starbucks, because it seems so small, but it could end up in the ocean and end up killing a sea turtle. That plastics negatively affect our lives whether we know it or not.